choosing, you can add 3, 4, 10, 20,000 votes in an election. And I mean, I think this is, I don't know. I really don't know with all that's going on. I know you're slightly optimistic, on the Republicans here, but looking at this chart, and I used to work in online marketing, for agencies and then inside and with media, and with the data they have now, what they're able to do. Yeah. Remember, they can look back at 2016, look at the result,
they can do. Yeah,
and project forward. So they have the data now from 2016.
That's right.
This is all extremely calculated.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So it's all about funneling. It's all about targeting. It's all about filtering. And we're going to see a lot more of it before we get to the which I think is probably going to be one of the most important elections in history. I think this, they say that. They say that, this is the most important.
No, but this one is.
This one is very important because so much is on the table, and there's been so much destabilization prior to this upcoming election.
And I just want to mention one other thing, that with demographic data now that's so precise, you can look at someone's IP address, and I'm guessing this now. I don't know this, but I'm guessing with between 70-80% chance you can know, did they vote and who they voted for. So with this kind of targeting now is incredibly precise.
Absolutely.
So we can't forget this, that I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the whole Cambridge Analytica thing and what they did. But remember, this is Cambridge Analytica with all the 2016 data.
Right.
It makes it that much more
powerful. They've got a bigger tranche. Now, oh my God. Let's be fair, because when the 2016 election was up and running and it was flying down the speedway, Google, which was led by Eric Schmidt at that time, Alpha Group, with Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was basically hired by Hillary Clinton,
right,
the DNC, to run their analytics campaign. And everything they were getting back from Eric Schmidt and Alpha was pointing towards a victory. And they were basically playing out a script that they were following based on the data and the analytics. And guess what happened? It didn't work. It didn't work because Eric Schmidt and Google, they didn't understand that there were large swaths of people that were unaccounted for. They did not factor in the right variables. Yeah, that's why they lost the election.
But remember, now they have that data.
Now they have the variables. They understand that. So what they're doing now is they're trying to eliminate the variables. And it's been a broad spectrum campaign to do that. And it's everything from completely denigrating Trump and his followers on a daily basis, demoralization, and now there's the cloud that comes over free speech and the actual elimination. I mean, to me, this is kind of like a version of Argentina, during the 70s. That disappears. And one day there's a website there and it's not there anymore. One day there's a YouTube channel there and it's not there anymore. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just happening in the virtual state.
I mean, I worked in the internet from about 97, 98. Do you remember that spirit of when Napster came out, when the beginnings of Napster? It was like the Wild West. And now it's turned into Sears.
Oh, it's turned into worse than Sears.
Well, you know what I mean.
I do. Well, I was at Mondo 2000 in 96. And Mondo was like the Bible of like the Silicon Valley interface between psychedelics and cybernetics. And the possibility that was floating around in the air was incredible.
It was fabulous.
Like the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, 95 to 2001 was the place to be. It was because there's stupid money being floated around by VCs and, dumb ideas. Some are actually good ideas. I was there. I worked for eMusic. I did it for 5 years. Went in on January of 2000. And I'll never forget, 2 months later, I went to a panel on digital music. And some journalist was talking about Napster. I'm like, this shit's over. Like,
I had lunch in 2000 with do you remember a site mp3.com?
Yeah. So my company wasn't my company, but the company I worked for eventually merged with mp3.com.
So I was having lunch with this guy in 2000, and he said it's done. And he came from the music industry too, and I was like, I was a kid when I was a kid, all my money I spent on LPs. No,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you sure? He said it's done. And for the first time revenue in music grew was with Spotify in 2014. It finally had an up year. That was almost 13 years down.
Right, and even the data from Spotify is really misleading because the amount of plays that has to take place in order for an artist to gain any, slightly significant amount of money. You cannot like compare a Spotify data point with a data point from the record industry circa 1980. It's just it's like
but I just mean total revenue in the music industry finally got an upflip after 13 negative years. That's incredible. But that kind of stuff happened every day. All sorts of stuff.
Well, it was incredible time.
It was a great time. And, kids now, I think, don't remember that time, but anything was possible. I would have meetings, and just your mind was blown. You're too.
I was like, what's really interesting is if you go back and watch that movie, The Smartest Guys in the Room with Enron, about Enron.
Ah, right, yeah, that's a great documentary.
So you look at what they're doing. And it's like, well, we're not just going to be an investment company. We're going to be a lot of things. And so Enron actually got into video streaming, like they were going to stream movies. And that was part of their stock portfolio. And they had built this whole thing out. And this is what they were going to do. And I mean, basically, Enron was selling hype. That's all they were doing, was selling hype until they figured out how to screw people out of their energy. But in some ways, it was like Silicon Valley. They're sitting there going, well, what can we do with this? And they actually entered into some partnerships. Like I think they entered into a limited partnership with the video store.
The one that from Huizinga's.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's so popular we can't remember it anymore. But
God, do you remember that? That seems like a different.
Dude, it's a different planet.
Oh my God,
it's a different
planet. What was the name of that place? I can't.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. I see it in my mind.
Blockbuster. So they entered into a limited deal with Blockbuster, and I don't know how Blockbuster was going to get the rights to stream the movies, but they entered into a deal to make it look legit, right? Like whatever. But that's what they were doing. The internet was amazing back then, and it was like there was this everything changed, man. On 9/11/2001, everything changed. That was the day. Napster, that was the atom bomb. But 9/11/2001 changed everything. There was a darkness that descended upon this country.
Yeah,
a pall that has not lifted.
Western Europe, yeah,
it is not lifted whatsoever. I'll give you one brief insight into my time in the music business there, the digital stuff, and we'll get into these charts. So when we got bought by Vivendi / Universal, and the guy there was a Seagram's company. So I was technically an employee of Seagram's for a while, and so they bought mp3.com and they bought the company I was with, and they merged us. So right after that happened, this guy Larry Kinswell came up, and he was the head of sort of this conglomeration, because there was also Universal Music involved. And there was a lot of moving pieces. And he came in and he talked to us. He said, we don't have any problem with digital music. We really don't. We just want to make sure that you always have to renew your relationship with it. Meaning that his vision has become the de facto model today. Like you can get 4,000 songs on iTunes Radio, right? Or Apple Music, but you got to keep paying that fee. Same thing with Spotify if you want the really good version of it. So this is what's happened now. This whole idea of ubiquity, you can get it on any device anywhere, right? But you don't own any of it. And that's what he was talking about way back in 2001. It's become the industry standard.
No, absolutely. And now we're seeing the end of because YouTube was kind of like the last great place where anything could happen.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to say, I just want to say two things. One, I really loved YouTube for a couple of years there because it was so free. No,
yeah.
I mean, you could find anything there.
You found
one of the reasons I made this film was that energy and you, because I remember I was talking to you once, and I have that square with it's a trine, Neptune to my Mercury, and I never forget. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. You go, Robert, you should make a film, and it stuck with me. And then I was thinking, that between what you said and that YouTube energy, that's why I made this. One of the reasons I made this film.
Well, that's great, man.
Today, so thank you, very much. But the thing is, it's so sad. This is like that. I'll never forget the day when Napster was banned. Some judge, I can't remember what happened. And I remember going in the office, and there was just this damper. No, it's like something had died in the music, that whole free music thing. And now you see the same thing with YouTube. It's sad. It's really sad.
No, I think it's a pretty good analogy, with the exception that Napster was tied to content that was out there being circulated, and people were actually trying to make money off of it. Like, I think music needed to have a little more liberation. Like, I think that the majors probably should have gotten involved in digital music earlier and tried to figure out how they could work with labels and artists. If they had done that earlier and Napster came along, they might have cordoned off their territory so that Napster wouldn't have been able to torpedo what they were doing. Because I think the difference between making a cassette for a couple of your friends versus making a playlist for 10,000 of your best friends is a very different proposition. Right. And if I was an artist, I would take some objection to that. If I was a touring artist, and that's all I really did, like if I was a Fish or one of those bands, I probably wouldn't give a shit because they make a lot of their money off merch and stuff like that.
But let's look at the big picture too. I remember living overseas in the 1980s. A long distance call would cost $20 for 5 minutes. Now it's free.
I know.
Think about the newspaper business. Do you remember buying the paper? Buying the paper, your coffee, your cigarettes? That's gone. So I mean, so many industries have been destroyed.
Oh, absolutely.
And let's face it, music fell into that bucket.
Music fell into that chasm. And if you were an artist right around 2002, 2003, if you didn't see the writing on the wall about how to recreate yourself, you're probably doing something else these days.
Think about journalism.
I
got an article mentioned in Market Watch, and you know how much money I got for it? Nothing.
Yeah. Well,
and what I mean is that my content was good enough to be in Market Watch, and guys working for Market Watch will pay. I think it was like $300-400 for an article.
Right.
When 40 years ago, these guys were making good money and they were living the life of a journalist, and they could write long form.
That's right.
Good luck with that, getting paid for long form now.
Yeah, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, so
I remember. I remember one of my the first times I got published in a daily newspaper, and it was the San Francisco Examiner, and I had 2 pieces published there in the Examiner. To me, it was a big deal. It was a daily. It was an afternoon daily. Well, it doesn't exist in that form anymore, and I kind of got in at the end of sort of being an independent journalist and doing stuff like that. Yeah, we're looking at the end of an era. I mean, it is coming to an end. And, one of the things that we talk about this over on my Facebook page, one of the things that I think people really need to do is buy books and have a library, because that day is coming.
Oh, it is.
Fahrenheit 451 is coming. They're telling us they did the remake. It is coming. And they're going to start to remove books. They're going to start to remove movies. This is just the first wave, right? Just think, right? At some point, somebody's going to look at Dirty Harry, and they're going to call that film a misogynistic and racist movie. And you won't be able to see Dirty Harry anymore. That's true. It's true.
And it's affecting artists, because I'll be completely honest. I was very careful making this film.
Yeah.
Stay away from anything. I want this film to stay on YouTube for a long time for people to be able to see it. But it's kind of a shame that I had to have that boogeyman